Our police department responds to every single 911 call. When 911 is called and there's an emergency, our police department shows up, as they've always done. Our police officers respond to every single emergency in this city. The brave women and men who sign up to serve and protect this city are committed to keeping us safe.
That's Chicago Mayor Brandon Johnson from earlier today defending his city's police department, saying they respond to every 911 call. Then how does he explain this response when federal agents who were surrounded by an angry mob needed help from the police?
And again, per the chief of patrol, we have all the units that per 999. Chief of Patrol said all units clear out from there. We're not sending anybody over to that location. All right, and 999, just to confirm, 39th Police in Kedzie, they were saying that they were being surrounded by that large crowd, and they were requesting the police were not sending. I'm waving off all the cars heading to 39th Police in Kedzie.
Again, those are the orders we're being given.
This is Outnumbered. I'm Harris Faulkner. Here with my co-hosts Emily Campagno and Kayleigh McEnany. Also joining us today, Lisa Booth, Fox News political analyst, and Douglas Murray, New York Post columnist and author of his brand new book on democracies and death cults. Fox News obtained a photograph of the dispatch order sent out after Border Patrol agents called in that they were under attack. The police department issued a statement yesterday trying to walk the order back, saying CPD officers did in fact respond to that shooting scene involving federal authorities on Saturday to maintain public safety and traffic control. However, two police sources told Fox News that's not true. Two suspects were arrested for allegedly ramming their cars into a CBP vehicle, and DHS says one suspect was flagged in an intelligence bulletin last week for threatening agents. This weekend, she allegedly sideswiped an agent's car and was carrying a gun. That agent, unable to escape, shot and injured her. Before we go further, I want to start with this first situation, Douglas. We are in what we might call, and some others have, an assassination culture. And so when you put people in danger and you cause a no-go zone around going to help agents or law enforcement, you're creating a perfect scene for someone to be killed.
Oh, yeah, and it's been happening for years, this. I mean, we've been talking in recent weeks, understandably, about the assassination culture, the culture of encouraging political violence in this country. I don't think that anyone has been more consistently on the receiving end of threats of violence than ICE agents in this country. I've seen it with my own eyes. In 2020, I was undercover with Antifa in Portland, and I just saw the way they were behaving towards the ICE agents. They try to burn them alive in their buildings. They set light to dumpster trucks and wheel them into the doors in the hope they can't get out. Now we have routinely the doxing of anyone who's ICE agents having to cover their faces for fear of retribution, hit lists out online with bounties on the heads of agents. I mean, this is obscene. This should not be happening in this country. These are federal employees.
Well, and not only the masking situation, you've got the governor of California saying, take the masks off. So you've got them trying to protect themselves, and the governor of a large state that has a lot of illegal aliens who are committing crimes in his state, wanting to protect the criminals over the people who've gone to take back order.
It's unfathomable. And I'm glad you bring up 2020 as they attempted to light that courthouse on fire in Portland. You know, I'm reading through the emergency motion that DOJ filed to the Ninth Circuit to reverse the order of the district court judge there in Portland saying you can't deploy the National Guard. And when you get to page 6, listen to this. They're still doing it, Douglas. Protesters repeatedly tried to burn down the Portland ICE office. One protester lit a flame, set fire to materials. The mob then piled on additional tinder, attempting to stoke the flames. That's just one of several incidents the government points to. And then you have this situation that is, I just can't even wrap my mind around. Portland police not allowed to go into this bubble. There's 2 liaison officers on either side. And then they go into the bubble to arrest Nick Sorter, conservative journalist, for doing nothing, according to him, but don't go in to stop this kind of stuff. This is why President Trump has to step in. And just I would say this, I spoke on Saturday in America, with Tom Homan. And I said to Tom, what's happening in Portland, the stand down of the police that we're seeing, is it happening in Chicago? And this was right before this incident happened. And he said to me, Chicago, New York, Portland, it's not the rank and file police officers. They want to do their job. Yeah. It is the Democratic lawmakers on top creating this dangerous situation.
Well, and if you do eventually have to send in law enforcement officers, you've endangered everybody's life at that point, because now they're walking into something that's already cooking with gas.
Well, absolutely, Harris. And for those opposing what ICE is doing, what's the alternative? Just allow terrorists, cartel members, child predators to remain in America? I mean, is that what these mayors and these governors are advocating for? I mean, essentially it is. And Douglas, I'm glad you mentioned the bounty story. I was co-hosting Fox and Friends yesterday when Secretary Noem broke that news. She said some of our ICE agents and officers have bounties put out for their heads, 2,000 to kidnap, 10,000 to kill. Their pictures are being sent around networks. And I asked her the follow-up question, well, who's behind it? Who is funding these bounties? And she said cartels and terrorist organizations. And she said they're working on a whole of government approach along with the Treasury Department to try to get to the bottom of who's funding these riots. She said she was in Chicago just a couple of days ago. They all have the same masks. They all have the same signs. And so inevitably, we know we have a domestic terrorism problem because that's essentially what is happening in these cities. They're using violence to try to change our government's approach, government policy. But how much overlap is there with foreign terrorism? And I think with some of these investigations, hopefully we get to the bottom of that.
Yeah, I want to go back for just a second. Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker dismissed the danger that agents are facing. His state has filed a lawsuit against the Trump administration for deploying the National Guard. Let's watch.
We don't have a lot of facts. Remember, these are the same folks who killed a person, unarmed person, just a couple of weeks ago in Franklin Park. At first, they said that the officer had been threatened with his life. The reality of it and the truth of it has now come out, and that wasn't the case. They killed somebody. They are just putting out their propaganda, and then we've got to later determine what actually happened.
Keep watching. Here's what DHS Assistant Secretary for Public Affairs Tricia McLaughlin said just this morning.
We believe this comes from the top. It looks like J.B. Pritzker is putting politics ahead of public safety, ahead of our law enforcement, their safety. The facts on the ground are the fact that our law enforcement were being rammed by vehicles, about 10 vehicles, one of which had a semi-automatic firearm on her.
Emily, it's out of control.
Yeah, I want to respond to what you were saying, Douglas, which is so important. And I think as we all talk about the horror that we feel over the safety of these officers, I want to illustrate a couple legal angles, too, because it's also about equal protection. And this, to me, is creating sort of a giant legal mess that renders us even more vulnerable. And unlike J.B. Pritzker, I use words us, because we are all Americans, right? We are all under the same flag. And he continues using those pejoratives, and they. Well, they are Americans tasked with enforcing the laws that the legislature has passed. So it's not just about officer safety, it's about equal protection. And thank God nothing happened to a federal officer or a local officer, because I know for a fact that if they had indeed been ordered to stand down, that all of them felt with their souls that it was crushing them to not render aid and come to the aid of their fellow Americans and their fellow brave Americans in uniform. And if something had happened, they have a massive case. This is deliberate indifference. This is breach of duty. And then we're sort of hearing, oh, no, we didn't order that. So then that, to me, becomes a PR nightmare. And any criminal defense attorney will tell you that that's creating this climate where then you can argue, well, is there bias? Is there, again, that deliberate indifference? Is there compromised investigation? Has this been politicized? So anything coming anywhere remotely out of that jurisdiction, I think, is ripe for a vulnerability. It's not just about this case, or it's not just about this aggressive and violent demonstration. No, this is about the consequences of having such a fractured identity, not a unified front, and not realizing the forest for the trees. The decisions and consequences go beyond a soundbite or a click on your Instagram. It actually has real-world legal consequences. And by God, if those consequences are physical, then it's something that America cannot sustain.
Look, last quick thought from you, Douglas, on, technically creating a no zone inside of a sovereign nation against law enforcement.
Yeah, it's outrageous, and it's been going on for years, and it should have stopped years ago. You cannot have, effectively, militia, which is what these groups like Antifa are. They are militia on American streets. And every time Democratic lawmakers have been told about this, they say the same thing. They say things like, either it's not happening, or what we see with our own eyes isn't being seen, isn't real, or they say things like, well, anti-fascist sounds good. Who isn't anti-fascist? You go, this group is a fascist group. They literally dress in black bloc. They attack and hospitalize journalists. They will go out of their way to attack federal officers, police, ICE, and others. And we just saw the other day with the shooter in California who fired his rifle at ICE agents. He killed 2 detainees, but he was firing live rounds at ICE officers. This is going to get worse if this is not finally countered.
Indeed.
All right, we'll move forward. The would-be assassin of Justice Brett Kavanaugh has been sentenced to just 8 years and 1 month behind bars. And the Justice Department says that is not enough and now is ready to take action. We'll